Hello, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tanisha Spain, and as you can see, we are out of the studio and on location at the Great Pumpkin Patch in Arthur, Illinois. This place is really cool, so much to see and do, and of course eat, one of my favorites. This is a 6th generation working family farm here. The Condill family owns these grounds, and they grow probably, he says, the most variety of pumpkins out of any patch in the world. They happen to be a favorite of, Martha Stewart. They've been featured at the White House and the Illinois Governor's Mansion. So this place is truly, truly incredible. But the family who lives here says their main goal is to get people to reconnect with agriculture and also to get these off of our front steps and more of them on our dinner plates. All right, and now we've caught up with Mac. So before we get into the grand tour and all of the business of pumpkins, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. Well, like I said, Mac Condill. I'm a 5th generation farmer here at the Great Pumpkin Patch just outside of Arthur, Illinois. So my great-great-grandfather rode by horseback out here in what is now West Virginia back in 1859. So that's where the Homestead Bakery and that kind of shout out comes from. We've got 6th generation now that are working at the farm. So that group of 8 cousins and all find a way to somehow help us out. My parents still live on property. I live in town now, but it's definitely a family affair, definitely a family full of educators and farmers, and we love opening the farm to people.
Excellent. Now, it's called the Great Pumpkin Patch, but
Yes.
you have so much more out here. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I oftentimes, with new employees, we go around and, we show them how to build a fence or pick a squash or whatever. And I said, that puts the Great in the Great Pumpkin Patch, right? So, but you're right. There's a lot of things that go into it. We, I think, are the most diverse pumpkin patch in the world. So what's that mean? Okay, cucurbit diversity. Cucurbits, the fancy name for pumpkin squash and gourds, right? So these little viney plants. So let's talk about cucurbits: watermelon, cantaloupe, cucumbers, pumpkin, squash, gourds. Loofah sponge, do you ever do the sponges?
Yes.
That's a cucurbit. So my point is cucurbits, Cucurbitaceae family is actually an underutilized, underappreciated vegetable. In fact, it's the 4th most popular plant family for human consumption over the span of time. So there's the grass family, so corn, wheat, oats, things like that. 2nd most important is Leguminosae, which would be your beans and peas and things like that. Actually, the 3rd most, I misspoke, the 3rd most is Cucurbitaceae. And the way you can really know that it's kind of underutilized, underappreciated, is the 4th most plant family is Solanaceae, which would be tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, right? So we eat tons of potatoes, peppers as Americans. However, worldwide, over the span of time, more cucurbits have been consumed by humans than potatoes, peppers, and that sort of thing. So, we as Americans don't often put it on our plate, right? We might decorate with it, and that's great. However, let's not forget that these things were put on this planet to be consumed, to be eaten. So, that's one of my pet peeves is when Halloween comes and they kick it to the curb and where's the nearest compost pile, right?
Yes.
Well, how about putting it on your plate? Let's figure that out.
Try that.
So we have different varieties. The Noah's Ark, we do a lot of repurposing around here. So this was a barn that we tore down to get all this beautiful red barn board. And now what we have is kind of showcasing the diversity of the pumpkin family. Squash marching up 2 by 2 as we try to save them from extinction. Right?
Now let's talk about that because you've got literally hundreds of different varieties. How many hundred?
We grow over 300 varieties. I've seen probably 800 in my lifetime that have come and gone through our fields and our isolation plots and that sort of thing, But you've got heirloom varieties, this is Seminole, which is from the Everglades in Florida. I was talking earlier, this was seen and documented by the Christopher Columbus expedition when they were coming up, what is the east coast of the U.S. They looked into the land and they saw these things, dangling from the trees and didn't know what they were. It's this squash that would have been eaten by the Native Americans and the other population in that time frame. So, beautiful, great keeper, 60-foot vines. They love growing up trees, which is where their spot would have been. And you can see they would have just dangled from the trees. So that's kind of a form of, evolution as such. This beige color, another little tip, anything that's beige is really, really good to eat. So butternut squash.
Okay.
almost everyone knows about the butternut squash, but there's so much more than butternut squash.
Yeah, hundreds
Seminole
apparently.
would be that. Yes, exactly. The pumpkin pie, that's a beige colored, tan colored squash that they make our canned pumpkin out of. So yeah,
It's
we
really cool
love,
to think that, you know, just as Americans, we think of that big orange jack-o'-lantern, right?
Yes.
That big pumpkin.
Yeah.
But like when you look at this, the species that you're trying to save, and
yeah.
there's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many different
Yeah.
colors and shapes and
If
varieties.
you talk to like South American anybody, but Brazil specifically, and said pumpkin, this is what they would think of. So this is a Brazilian pumpkin, right? It's not orange, it's not a jack-o'-lantern, and this is highly edible, Moranga de Mesa. In fact, it's got these beautiful little, you know, kind of wedges that I would just cut these wedges, take it out. It almost looks like a cantaloupe. You just scoop the seeds out, and I grill these just on an open flame. You know, it's like you were a piece of chicken or something. A little bit of seasoning, and it's that simple. And that's what people all around the world are using these for. And yet we look at it and think, oh, that's not recognizable. There's no use for this.
Yes.
Well, we're in the wrong, right? We're kind of uneducated. So we hope when people come out here to the Great Pumpkin Patch, they kind of open their eyes to all the vegetables.
And that's one of your focuses here. You
Yes.
talked about making the cucurbits the destination. That's the
Right.
reason people are
Yes.
coming. We see a lot of bounce houses and other things at pumpkin patches, but you want people to really get connected here and learn while they're
Yes, yeah, we're production-based, you know, ag-based, sixth-generation farm. You know, it's like I said, it's our backyard. My parents still live here, but in the fall, it kind of turns into this cucurbit wonderland of sorts, and we love showcasing the diversity of the pumpkin family. And anybody that we can get that gets excited about, you know, an heirloom squash and starts asking for it by name, that's how things stay around, right? Because they're being wanted or looked for or whatever. So the more people we can get acquainted with Seminole squash or Moranga de Mesa, the more seed companies might keep it on their shelf, the more backyard gardeners might grow it, the more you might see it eke into a farmer's market, into someone's dining room table. Then all of a sudden you've kind of got your claws in it, and it'll stick around longer, because we're losing heirloom varieties right and left, whether it's carrots, potatoes, cucurbits, whatever. And that's a shame, because there's some beautiful stuff out there that's been around a lot longer than we have, that still deserves, I think, a nod and you know, some recognition, if you will.
And you've had international folks come here, just
yeah.
stop in for a visit,
Yes.
and were completely blown away that they
Yeah.
were able to find
That's funny,
something
yeah.
from
just,
their native
last
land.
weekend, I had a couple from India. They're American citizens now, but they live in Springfield, and they came last year, and they're looking through one of our displays. We have the League of Cucurbit Nations, right? So all the Brazilian squash is under the Brazilian flag, and all the Australian squash and so on. So we have some squash from India, and they were blown away. Like, this is my stuff. This is what we make our soup out of. So of course I sold them the few that I had, and they just couldn't believe it. So
Wow.
I think it's really cool to come, you know, to East Central Illinois and the Amish country and have an international squash grown in Central Illinois, and then you've got that clientele that makes it out here and then makes that connection. I mean,
Yes.
that's so special to us, special to them. Become, you know, probably a repeat customer, and it's a great story around a squash.
Excellent. Okay, let's go check out the A to Z pumpkins, because I found that fascinating. Or
Yes,
squash. Wait,
yeah.
should I say pumpkins? Should I say cucurbits? What's the proper term?
Right, you know, whatever rolls off your tongue.
Okay.
So yeah, I think the cucurbits, we tend to kind of dumb it down, which I hate to do that, but I think of orange pumpkins as pumpkins, and we call pretty much everything else squash.
Gotcha.
All right,
Okay.
but like you've got the Tetsukabuto, which is one of our favorites. That's a Japanese pumpkin.
see.
Okay, but I would call it a squash. And this is one. Have you ever gotten into one of these? Do you
No.
want to do this? Okay, so let me set this down. This we had with Martha Stewart, and this is Tetsukabuto in Japanese, means iron squash. So you can tell it is hard as
It
a rock.
is.
All right.
It is.
So I have a lot of folks that say, I don't have a knife big enough. I don't have, and so we're just going to pop that off, and we're going to find the nearest hard surface, and you're just going to pop it
Really?
right down. Yes, right on the ground. Let's see what happens.
Wait, just
boom.
sideways? Okay, just
Doesn't
do
matter. Just do it. No. What did I say? Iron squash. You got to
Hard-
pop
I gotta
that thing.
slam it?
Pop it. Yeah. Oh, for goodness sakes.
All right.
One more. Come on. Yeah.
There we
look
go.
at that.
There we go.
And perfectly in half. So you just would take those seeds out, and then you've got all this meat in here to make a roasted squash. Anything you do.
Does this grill well?
Oh yes,
Yeah?
absolutely. I make like a hash brown out of it, where you just do little
Ooh.
wedges, little olive oil, fry it up. Here's my trick. Anything you can do with a potato, you can do with a squash. So you think, what does that mean? Okay, mashed potato, mashed squash, boiled potatoes, fried potatoes. We've done like French fries out of something like this that's got a neck on it, where you
Really?
can put it through, a cutter, where you get these like sweet potato fries, right? It's the same thing. Sweet potato is an autumnal root vegetable. You can do anything with a squash that you can do with a potato.
And it smells kind of like watermelon.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I
Same
wonder why.
family,
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
but-
cousins.
Interesting. Now for the at-home gardener, of course we
Yeah.
want folks to come visit, but we also want people to get back to growing at home.
yeah.
So can people find a lot of these rare types?
Right. There are a couple companies in the U.S. based that are starting to offer more heirloom varieties. So I would say it's probably more readily available than you think.
Okay.
And then once you do it, I think one of the tricks is let any barriers go. Like, I hate when gardeners confine themselves to, well, the book says this, or
Yes.
page this.
Yes.
No, it's a plant. It wants to do one thing, grow, produce, whatever it is. So cucurbits want hot, dry weather. That's why Central Illinois can grow any squash from around the world right here, because they're also like a 75 to 140 day, but
And that
mostly
fits right in
90
our-
day. Yeah. So it's a June, July, August, and then September you've got your fruit type of a thing. So, you can plan on, think of, a lot of people make the mistake, everyday gardener, they put their corn out or maybe their lettuce, early as they can get in, and they just rush it, and the tomatoes go in early. Think about what our May and our June, certainly May has been the last few years, cold and wet.
Yes.
Cucurbits like what? Hot and
and
dry.
dry.
They don't want anything to do with that early spring cold
Okay.
weather.
So get your flower beds in.
Yes.
Get your
but
earlier.
later the better for
Yes.
cucurbits. They play catch up really well when it's like putting them in, mid-June, even late June, just depends. And then the space is a lot of times what people
Yes.
have an issue with. Oh, I don't have a big garden for a pumpkin or a squash or whatever to grow in. Again, get rid of the barrier, think outside the box. So do you have a fence that this climber could climb on? Do you have an old tree that's a little bit uglier on its way out that it could go up? They love growing vertically. Do you have an old TV tower? Like, how cool would that be to have one of those Seminoles, with
Sure.
that cool vine and the stem hanging down? I've seen it or even thought of it on like a mailbox area. There's gourds that are smaller, little bush plants, patio pots.
Yes. There's
You
something
could do
for
some,
everyone.
yeah, like a lot of the acorn squash, even the buttercups, come in a semi-bush or a bush habit. So those could easily go into just a normal patio pot. I'd put 3 seeds, maybe 5 to start with, thin them out to 2 plants, and then just feed them like you normally would, and watch them literally grow and produce food for you.
Excellent. And so they're not hard to grow. Pretty low
No.
maintenance, would
yeah.
you say?
Yeah, you're gonna, you want some kind of pest application, whether it be an organic thing or 7, like the powder, super easy. The cucumber beetles will, the little teeny guys,
Yes.
they'll kind of wreak a little bit of havoc, but especially if it's not a big area, you can certainly take care of that. The only thing that would be the worst is the vine borer, and that's when we've all come out and you see these beautiful zucchinis, and then the next morning, one of your 3 looks like, it stayed out too late the night before or something like that. So, and it's done. It is
Yes.
done. And but the roots are gooey, and you just kind of pull the whole thing up and think, what happened? That was a vine borer.
That's the vine
And
borer.
so that is really hard to deal with. The way you have to do it, and I hate to say this, but it's rotation, crop rotation. You're supposed to get off of that property with your cucurbits for 7 years.
Oh, wow.
Or
After
else-
one season?
Yes, yeah. So
Really?
if you have
Okay.
a vine borer problem, you need to get off of it and let that vine borer just kind of whittle through and deal with it. Because if you keep planting cucurbits into that same spot, you're going to still have the same issue. Now, you could put a pot with new soil right on top of it and probably be okay. But it's
Sure.
that soil-borne vine
Got it.
borer. So you got to kind of keep your patch moving. right? So
Okay.
rotate it with your corn, your beans, your cucurbits. Back in the the days of the Native Americans, where you'd have the three sisters, you grew the corn upright. Back then, beans were runner beans, so they would use the corn almost as a trellis, and then your ground cover, squash.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So you've got all three of those living in the same exact spot. Nowadays, we have our cornfield here,
Yes.
our bean field
Everything
here,
is
our
so neat
right?
and-
But back in the day, when things were, I think, maybe a little more intelligent even, they grew them all together, and they really worked together because one shaded out the weeds, one was holding up the other one, the beans were fixating the nitrogen for the corn. It's all symbiotic, just
together.
working together. So why not get back to that in some little backyard, kind of good harmony. I'm really interested in that, and I would encourage people to do that. The other thing that people think is, oh, I'm going to take the seeds of this and grow it. And you could. However, these all grew all together in my patch, so they've all been cross-pollinated. So these seeds have been predetermined to what they are, and it was how they got pollinated. So for instance, if you have a zucchini and a pumpkin growing together, the seeds inside of those for next year could very easily be a pumpkini or a zucumpkin or what, it's some mix of the two.
Yes.
It's not what you want. It's
Yes.
not pure. So that's where isolation comes into play.
Okay.
You need to be a half a mile from the nearest cucurbit in the same species in
Okay.
order to get pure
The true.
seed. Yes.
The true.
Yeah, or you buy new seed every year. So,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we talked about other things that you guys grow out here. You've got lovely mums, and it's fall is the perfect time of
Yeah.
year for those.
Yeah.
So let's go check out some of the mums.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so we talked about pumpkins, cucurbits are not the only thing grown here on the farm. You guys have a beautiful selection of mums.
Yeah, thank you. Well, diversity is kind of in the whole genes, right? So we have all different shapes, sizes, colors. This is one plant that comes in as like a rooted cutting, about as big as my pinky, usually the first week of June. So we have
Wow.
2 weeks of mum potting, and they go right, we grow them right here by the bakery. They go right out on the mum lot, and we've got an irrigation system, and we do a fertilizer injector system where it's pressurized, and we water and fertilize every single day for the mums from the 1st of June until we sell the last one. So
About how many would you say come through here in a season?
we grow 5,400 mums.
5,400
yeah,
mums. And are there different varieties, or are they just different colors? 'Cause I don't know.
They're different varieties. They're all female names typically, so Valerie and Spicy Cheryl and Sparkling Cheryl. So like Cheryl is usually a pink variety, but then they've kind of done an offshoot of that. And so yeah, we have different, like everything else, we plant it, we get early season, mid-season, late season colors. So we try to have yellows from beginning to end, and corals and pinks, and the purple varieties that have come in the last few years are
Yes.
incredible,
Yes, they
and just
are.
so eye-popping. It's not necessarily that autumnal color that you'd be used to, but man, does it really pop.
Yeah,
So,
and the ones with like the dots in the center with
Yeah.
the different coloration. I mean, they're just, like you said, here lately, the colors have just kind of exploded.
Exactly.
What's the growing, like if I were to buy these,
Okay.
how long do they keep on the porch before?
Right.
Because they last after
Oh,
a
yes.
frost,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, in fact, I've seen them look good on people's porches or whatever till November. The frost would kind of, cut them back a little bit and brown them out. So you just throw a little towel over it or something like that if there's a big threat of frost. But making sure they're watered. These take a lot of water, so it's
Okay.
that trick of any house plant, anything like that, where you kind of ignore it, and then after 3 days it looks dry and it's going to be hard to get back.
You're trying to play catch up?
Yes, so getting water on them and keeping them watered, and then as long as you keep them out of the frost, they can easily last into this forgotten holiday called Thanksgiving, because people are so fast to go to Christmas. And that's another thing that we fight around here with all the cucurbits and the food, is like, don't let Halloween be the end, don't close the door on what is Thanksgiving, which is really truly the celebration of a harvest, right? Don't be so fast to get that big blow up Santa out. Like stay with your, Thanksgiving theme.
Sometimes I cheat because I don't, it's kind of sad to watch everything die.
Yeah.
So I'll pull them close to the house, really,
yeah.
really close to the porch, just so I can hang on to them for
Yeah.
a week or so longer
Yes,
before
yeah.
the cold takes them.
And these are hardy mums, but like any gardener knows, that's kind of a suggestion. I mean, mums are very temperamental. And based on color, based on where on your house, south side, warm facing, little microclimate, do you mulch it? Do you cut it back? I mean, I've done everything. I've told people everything. The main thing is the heaving, like the freezing and thawing. It can take the cold. It's just when it freezes and thaws, it lifts up a little bit. And then the next time it lifts up more. So then all of a sudden you're above the ground level. And then when it gets zapped, then you've got problems. So if you can keep it frozen, it's fine. If you can keep it from freezing by putting a lot of leaves and things, like I like keeping the branches on even when they've died out, and then just raking in a bunch of leaves around it. It might look unsightly for a little while, but more than likely in March, you'll have a better chance of getting that little crown alive.
A little crown to come back.
Yeah.
Peeking out of the leaves there.
Yes, exactly.
Excellent. All right, let's go take a look at the patch, and I want to talk some more about the history and kind of the mission here, because you're really big about reconnecting people to the earth, reconnecting people to the roots, and so I would love to go see a growing patch.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so our last stop here on our grand tour of the Pumpkin Oasis is the Children's Garden.
Yeah.
Love this, actually. And we've seen a ton of kids, lots of school groups out here today. Why is it so important to get these kids out here and get them hands-on?
Well, I just think they don't get an opportunity to be like hands-on a farm like we used to. And I'm talking years back. It used to be when I was at Illinois State.
Crows.
Yeah, Illinois State. You're at Illinois State.
I am.
Yeah.
Go
So
Redbirds.
I was in the soil science class or something, and they said back in the early 1900s, over 80% of the U.S. population had a direct connection to the land. So 80 out of 100 people grew up on a farm. Grandma had a farm, grandpa, whatever.
Yes.
Now less than 2% of the U.S. population.
Wow.
So 2 out of 100 even know where one is or what it looks like or anything. So we have 98 out of 100 people out there that have no connection. And I think that one, it's reality. And two, I think there's still something longing. I think there's something, I think you're seeing it this today. People kind of relax when they come on the farm, right? And we are a legit production farm, right? We're 6th generation now with my kids. We're still production based. Everything's grown here. We've got, a little nod to the animal diversity. We used to grow corn and soybeans as well, but now it's just cucurbits. So we're all cucurbits the whole time.
Now, how did your family make that transition?
Okay, yeah. So we started in 1989. Well, in the mid 80s, I was just a little guy with 3 brothers, and farming was bad, really bad in the 80s. Several droughty years, very low prices. That's when a lot of people lost their family farm in the 80s. So people either went even more into debt and tried to get bigger to cover. They had to sell the farm, or they had to diversify or find some way to supplement, right? So my parents went back to work in education, subbed and things like that. And we started this pumpkin patch, what is now the Great Pumpkin Patch. So we always grew pumpkins. We had them in the backyard, and there's a fascination with kids and pumpkins.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. I don't know how to describe it, but you still see it to this day.
Oh, yes.
Big kids turn into little kids. I saw a woman yesterday that was 80 plus, and I've never seen so many pumpkins in my life. Just such a fun reaction to this vegetable. And then when we can open people's eyes to the diversity, then all of a sudden, I think these connections and these experiences can get a little bit deeper and can kind of put a perspective on what it is that is still reality. It's still seasonal. There's still some truth to agriculture and how these things are produced, because you go and think of other places you can buy a pumpkin. They're in a cardboard box on the sidewalk of a big box store, right? There's no experience there, right? The product is maybe there, but the experience is not. So, we pride ourselves on providing a safe place for everyone to experience the harvest season and to connect to the land and each other. And so we've got that happening on a daily basis, one instance at a time, with different generations and different groups of people, and showcasing the diversity of the pumpkin family is right in the middle of it.
And I wanted to mention, you were kind of literally born for this, right? Your birthday is
October 26th.
And that falls on
National Pumpkin Day.
I mean, it couldn't get any better than that.
I know. It's a crazy full circle sort
yeah,
of thing.
for sure.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for opening your home, your farm, your business, and your passion to us.
Yeah.
We really appreciate it. I'm sure our viewers will appreciate that. And if you have any questions or want some more information about the Great Pumpkin Patch, you can send us an email to yourgarden@gmail.com, or just look up the patch. What's the website?
The200acres.com.
The200acres.com. Thank you so much, Mac. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate having you.
And thank you for watching, and we will see you next time. Good night.